Welcome back to the Dark Archive. I'm Gavin.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Shyla.
And we're back this week with an all-new episode. It'll happen, every week that there's an episode, it'll be a new episode. Last week we had the 2 episodes come out, The Curse of King Tut and The Night Witches. So 2 great episodes. If you haven't listened to those, definitely check those out. After you listen to this episode, you don't really need any prior knowledge, because this week we're going to be talking about something new. But first, how are you guys doing?
Tired.
Yeah, I'm also tired, but alright.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very relatable state to be in. Not to start off on a downer, I feel like you can't get enough sleep.
Oh, true.
I think that's just adult life. That's just what it is.
Well, some people have lived some very crazy, very exciting lives. Maybe the stories of those lives will help wake everybody up. This is a very exciting, high stakes story. You guys you wanna know who we're talking about today?
Do tell.
D.B. Cooper, allegedly. That is allegedly his name, but it might not be his name. We can determine that by the end of it. So D.B. Cooper, for those who don't know, what I'm about to read was pulled from FBI.gov, which I have to say, I know that there's nothing inherently. It's like an archived page about him, because spoiler alert, this is from the 70s. And there's nothing illegal about looking at FBI.gov, but it's such like a bare bones website that I felt like just looking at FBI.gov, I was like on a watch list that like, why is he reading so much about this?
I can't say I've ever actually been on the FBI.gov website.
I certainly haven't.
Does it look like it's from the 2000s, or is it just really blank?
It's just pretty blank. I could pull it up. That's so much effort. I'm not gonna pull it up.
You can't be on the watch list again today.
No, I can't. I don't want them to see that I came back another time, because then if I come back again, then it's like, oh, now he's looking again. I mean, yeah, I hadn't seen it before I did this research, but it's also like it's very well written. It's obviously like they've got some writers among their ranks.
That
I guess.
FBI, they're onto something.
I'm on my way.
They're gonna.
They
take
might
off
just
one
make
day.
it. Those crazy kids.
They're really they're going places.
Oh.
So, I thought. There were plenty of. There was like some other weird like archive-esque websites, but then all they would have links to is like Fox News like articles that I was like, I guess I'd rather listen to the government, but it was close. It was a close margin.
This is like the most depressing featured content tab I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, are you on FBI.gov?
Oh yeah, I ran to FBI.gov. The first one is the hate crime statistics from 2021. Then the most wanted case of the week, which is a homicide case, and then the capital violence seeking information tab.
I like FBI Kids. I want to click on FBI Kids. What is FBI Kids?
Where's FBI Kid? Where are you seeing that?
If you click on more, it's towards the bottom.
Oh, this doesn't seem very like
part 1. Yeah, this is Stop Sextortion is number 2 though. Jesus Christ.
And like they've got a big FBI jobs, and they've
FBI
got like,
Kids has got the Lindbergh kidnapping in the universe.
Yeah, also like one of their top tabs is like the FBI.gov/wanted, which being on that tab and seeing just all the mugshots, that makes me go, I should not be here. Like, why should I have to be? And then it's like 10 most wanted fugitives, most wanted terrorists, crimes against children, violent crimes - murder.
What a fascinating website this is.
Now the government is going to be like, why all of a sudden is there a little spike that a bunch of people are looking at all the same pages at the same time?
Also, the most wanted terrorist in the world is a woman. Such feminists they are.
Yeah, breaking feelings.
Hashtag women can be terrorists too.
There's actually a few women on the list. If you click on it, now I'm afraid
didn't. I got out.
You shouldn't click on the list. But even like the DB Cooper one is like, the URL is like, it's under like famous cases. So it's like they're like also showing off that they're like, yeah, check out some of this we've done. Although, spoiler alert, they should not be showing us off because
They never caught him.
they never caught him. That's the whole thing. So getting into it, DB Cooper. The episode's titled "The Hijacker That Truly Disappeared." Because again, spoiler alert, they never found him. Although we'll talk later about some suspects and also recently in the news, maybe a few months ago, depending on when this was recorded, a man has come forward, like a 70 or 80-year-old man has come forward and claimed to be DB Cooper.
Mm.
Um,
Is he behind bars?
no, they made a documentary about it.
Oh,
But-
so sounds legit.
They made a documentary and then he like basically wrote a script and then they also reenact what he's saying. So it's like half documentary, half like narrative film.
Fantastic.
And
Interesting.
when you try and look up his name, he does not show up on any major news sources. So I've got to say, I don't think he is DB Cooper.
Mm.
It's a pretty
Tell us
low
about
budget.
DB.
I'll tell you about him. So this is, like I just said, straight from FBI.gov. This is what they have to say about the story of DB Cooper. On the afternoon of November 24th, 1971, a nondescript man calling himself Dan Cooper approached the counter of Northwest Orient Airlines in Portland, Oregon. He used cash to buy a one-way ticket on Flight 305 bound for Seattle, Washington. Thus began one of the great unsolved mysteries in FBI history. Again, they wrote that on their own website. They should not be bragging about unsolved mysteries in their history.
They said, here are flops. We're exposing them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're owning it
Like
up.
iCloud.
That's good.
He-
The FBI is nothing if not self-aware.
Exactly. They're like, this is all we got. But I couldn't figure it out. It was a doozy. That was a tough one, guys.
This one was hard.
This one was hard. We should get the FBI on that. We are the FBI. Anyway, DB Cooper. Cooper was a quiet man who appeared to be in his mid-40s, wearing a business suit with a black tie and a white shirt. He ordered a drink, bourbon and soda, while the flight was waiting to take off. Because, you know, it's the 70s. They're all drinking and smoking on planes and I don't know, whatever. Yeah, I'm sure planes were... Well, we'll be the judge of how safe planes are after this story. A short time after 3 p.m., he handed the stewardess a note indicating that he had a bomb in his briefcase and wanted her to sit with him.
Oh, new
I
friend.
shouldn't laugh. This is serious, but when you take it, it's a little funny. The stunned stewardess did as she was told. Opening a cheap attaché case, Cooper showed her a glimpse of a mass of wires and red-colored sticks and demanded that she write down what he told her. I don't think that there was... I don't know if he had a bomb.
He brought like dynamite sticks. That was the bomb.
Like a goddamn Looney Tune he is.
Yeah, just like TNT. He's like, look at my briefcase. Sit down.
Have a seat.
Also, like, did no one else see the massive TNT sticks? It's like he was just like, oh, here, and no one else saw.
Yeah, I can't imagine the plane had that many people on it. And like,
Did it say, was it first class was he sitting in? Because if he's going out, he should go out in style, right?
well, we'll actually get to that. He was sitting in the
okay.
very back of the plane,
Oh, coach. Couldn't spring for more.
like literally the last row, and we'll get into that. They were like, oh, that was probably strategic, but yeah, maybe he just couldn't afford a better seat. So he asked her to sit with him. Soon she was walking a new note to the captain of the plane that demanded 4 parachutes and $200,000 in $20 bills, which today, I just did this math yesterday, so due to inflation, $200,000 in 1971 would equal $1,470,000 and then some change. So $1.47 million is what he basically just got on the plane and asked for.
Not bad for an hour's work, you know?
No,
Good money if you can get it.
Yeah.
yeah, a solid wage, salary, I guess, but also very middle school to be like, can you pass this note to the captain? Like, I can't. I don't want to ask him myself.
It's got 2 check boxes. Can I have this money? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Please check yes or no. You want to go on a date when we land? I'm buying. But also, I feel like if you're gonna try and rob a place and steal money, I'm not sure how a plane is the best
Yeah.
place to do it because I have a feeling they don't keep a lot of cash on hand on planes.
Yeah. I was gonna ask about that. Like, where like, did they at this point in time like have some like was that a thing? I don't
They
know.
didn't, but now we'll get into we'll see if it plays out. So when the flight landed in Seattle, so like he wasn't stopping it from landing. He was like, "Hey, call
Where was he
ahead."
flying out of? Did I miss that?
Oregon, Portland,
Oregon.
Oregon, on a plane to
Oh,
Seattle.
so it's a short flight. Okay.
Yeah, and this is all takes place up in that
Mm.
Northwest area and like very wooded area. Spoiler alert: they're flying over a lot of forest. We'll get back to that. But he basically passes his note saying, "Have this stuff ready for me when we land." But also, then at that point, you're gonna have
I see.
police waiting for you, probably. I would guess.
Hmm.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. So when the flight landed in Seattle, the hijacker exchanged the flight's 36 passengers for the money and parachutes. Cooper kept several crew members, and the plane took off again, ordered to set a course for Mexico City. So now, way down. Somewhere between Seattle and Reno, a little after 8 p.m., the hijacker did the incredible. He jumped out of the back of the plane with a parachute and the ransom money. The pilots landed safely, but Cooper had disappeared into the night, and his ultimate fate remains a mystery to this day.
So, a couple things. A, the FBI said the hijacker did the incredible. That's their wording?
Yeah,
cool.
Their words.
So do you think the plane went all the way to Mexico City? After, they're like, we're just gonna make sure.
Just for shits and giggles?
Just for shits and gigs.
He's like, take me to Mexico City, and then he jumps out, and there's like the pilot and like
Reno.
2 stewardesses, and they're like, well, we already have it set. It's already in the system, I guess.
I don't know if that's how that works.
I don't think it is. Also, especially in 1971, that's definitely not how it works.
Yeah.
I'm kind of even surprised that they had like, well, I was about to say like phones on planes, but I guess it was then that's why it had to go through the captain just to get to some cell tower, and then they probably had to talk to the police and get the money together. And yeah, so the FBI learned of the crime in flight and immediately opened an extensive investigation that lasted many years. Obviously, it didn't work.
Covering their asses right there. We were immediately on this.
Yeah, like working extensively for years. Obviously, not enough years. They never figured it out. Calling it NORJAC for Northwest Hijacking. They're big label. They love labeling investigation.
Branding.
The FBI interviewed hundreds of people, tracked leads across the nation, and scoured the aircraft for evidence. By the 5-year anniversary of the hijacking, they'd considered more than 800 suspects and eliminated all but 24 from consideration. That's a lot of people. Which makes sense. The guy disappeared. One person from this list, Richard Floyd McCoy, is still a favorite suspect among many. This, again, FBI's words. That they're like, we can't confirm it, but a lot of people like this guy. It's not like it's like American Idol or something, where they're like,
He's just a fan
he was
favorite.
a fan favorite. Yeah. I guess put in your votes for Richard Floyd McCoy as a fan favorite for being who's DB Cooper. The FBI tracked down and arrested McCoy for a similar airplane hijacking and escape by parachute less than 5 months after Cooper's flight. So they were like, oh, this other guy did it. He probably is just trying to get lucky again. I guess. But McCoy was later ruled out because he didn't match the nearly identical physical descriptions of Cooper provided by 2 flight attendants and for other reasons. That's what they said. That's it. They just cut off the sentence. For other reasons. We don't want to get into it. It's not like we're the FBI. So then this is how they ended. Perhaps Cooper didn't survive his jump from the plane. What a great suggestion from the FBI. After all, the parachute he used couldn't be steered, his clothing and footwear were unsuitable for a rough landing, and he had jumped into a wooded area at night. A dangerous proposition for a seasoned pro, which evidence suggests Cooper was not. Wow. Good one, FBI. Really nailed the hammer on the head, that one.
I do like the idea, though, that after that, they're like, but we're going to still spend 5 years on this, but he might be dead.
Yeah, they're like, no, he might have died. And actually, I think, oh, well, there were a few more paragraphs in the FBI's site. I'm skipping over one because we'll get into it later. But then how they end it is, where did DB come from? It was apparently a myth created by the press. We did question a man with the initials DB, but he wasn't the hijacker. Thanks. Okay. And then their final sentence, really sealing it all up. The daring hijack and disappearance remain an intriguing mystery for law enforcement and amateur sleuths alike.
I wonder if the FBI's like PR people had to like, I don't know, did they have like a spin person on this where they're like, write this story, but like slip a few lines in there.
Yeah, cover our asses a little bit. Yeah.
Be like, oh, we did all these things, but like that guy wasn't him, that guy wasn't him. It was so hard to find him. We just couldn't do it.
Yeah, after the decades of looking through all these hundreds of people, we just figured he's probably dead at this point. Couldn't have made it through all those years of us searching through 800 people. So that's what the FBI had to say about it. So at first I read that and I was like, that definitely can't be the whole story. What the fuck did they do? So now we're going to talk about what they did. So there was some physical evidence, and I touch upon this later, but our boy DB Cooper was very specific, I'll say, about not leaving evidence. But he did have a little bit of a downfall on a few items. So during the forensic search of the aircraft, FBI agents found 4 major pieces of evidence, each with a direct physical link to Cooper. A black clip-on tie, a mother-of-pearl tie clip, a hair from Cooper's headrest, and 8 filter-tipped Raleigh cigarette butts from the armrest ashtray. So obviously, they're looking for DNA, which makes sense.
I'm sorry. A clip-on tie. He wore a clip-on tie.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure as the way that it's always portrayed in movies and documentaries and stuff is that as he's going to jump out of the plane, because he's wearing a suit, as I said earlier. He puts on the parachute and like, I don't know if he undoes the tie or like the tie comes flying off as he like jumps out of the plane. But I guess it didn't go out in the air. It was in his seat. So I guess he must have taken it off, tossed it in the seat because he was very meticulous and then goes, I gotta bail. So the FBI agents found a black clip-on tie in seat 18E where Cooper had been seated. Attached to the tie was a gold tie clip with a circular mother-of-pearl stone in the center of the clip. The FBI determined the tie had been sold exclusively at J.C. Penney department stores, but was discontinued in 1968. Just in case you want your own. They didn't make them anymore. But I guess an interesting route to take of trying to be like, all right, maybe we can track down if he just bought it for this, to get dressed up to pull a heist. And maybe pull some DNA off of the tie, I guess. By late 2007, the FBI had built a partial DNA profile from samples found on Cooper's tie in 2001. So they did find particles of stuff. However, the FBI also acknowledged no evidence linked Cooper to the source of the DNA sample. Said FBI Special Agent Fred Gutt, quote, the tie had 2 small DNA samples and 1 large sample. It's difficult to draw firm conclusions from these samples. So I guess it wasn't enough. And I forget if I mention it later. I'm not sure if I do. I think I might have cut it. But they did find multiple traces and particles of different metals on his tie. And so through looking at those metals, I don't remember the specific one, and I cut it because it was like a whole other path that pretty sure went nowhere. But they basically tried to figure out if they could attach it to where he worked, because there were only a few places that dealt with that specific type of metal. So then they were like, maybe he worked at, I don't know if it was a manufacturing plant or something that worked on the Boeing planes, which is then why he had the knowledge of knowing what to do and how to get out of the plane and stuff, and like just how his knowledge of the plane. But there were a lot of different theories that eventually went to like his knowledge of the plane and like how to even use a parachute, because a normal person probably isn't able to use a parachute. Like I would not know how to immediately use a parachute if someone just handed me one. And then also like his knowledge of the countryside. So there's some theories later that we'll talk about, like that they're like, oh, he was in the military, or like he worked making planes, but again, they never knew. So another sample of physical evidence that they found that you think would lead somewhere was a hair sample. The FBI actually found 2 hair samples in Cooper's seat, a single strand of hair on the seat and a single strand of brown Caucasian head hair on the headrest. The hair on the seat was destroyed after the FBI crime laboratory determined the sample lacked enough unique microscopic characteristics to be useful. I don't know if they did, what year they did that, but you should probably just keep it just in case.
Why would you destroy it?
You never know. If maybe we'll get better technology as time goes on. However, the FBI crime laboratory determined the head hair was suitable for future comparison and preserved the hair on a microscope slide. During their attempts to build Cooper's DNA profile in 2002, the FBI discovered the hair sample had been lost. Did you just read that sentence and that's why you were laughing?
I did read ahead and I lost it.
Yeah, so they destroyed one of the hair samples and they just lost the other one.
Damn. Okay. Also, like, how do you destroy a hair sample? Like, what do you think they did to it?
Put it in the incinerator or something?
That was my thought. Like they
we don't need
it.
this anymore.
That's so dramatic.
Or do you think that they were like looking at it on the slide and they're like, we don't need this anymore? Like, all right,
someone like sneezed and like accidentally they destroyed it because they didn't need it anymore.
Yeah, the FBI agents sneezed and they're like, we didn't need it anyway. Let's just say that we didn't need it anymore. So, and if you couldn't tell, all of this I did not get from the FBI website. This is all from other sources. I'm sure the FBI is not like putting this on the front page.
Like, oh, we lost that one.
Yeah. So with other physical evidence, things that they did not lose, but I'm not going to say that too soon. Don't read ahead on this one.
Okay.
The cigarette butts on the seat. It was said that he like immediately ordered the drink and was like smoking like a lot of cigarettes. Which later they concluded that they were like, he probably smokes like a pack or 2 a day just by like the amount of time that he had smoked all of these cigarettes. So in the armrest ashtray of the seat 18E, FBI agents found 8 Raleigh filter-tipped cigarette butts. The cigarette butts were sent to the FBI crime laboratory to search for fingerprints, but investigators were unable to find fingerprints and returned the butts to the Las Vegas field office. In 1998, the FBI sought to extract DNA from the cigarette butts, but discovered the butts had been destroyed while in the custody of the Las Vegas field office.
Can we stop destroying evidence? Oh my god.
There's really like, there's this much evidence, and they're like, let's not take care of it. Let's throw it. Bob sneezed, lost the hair. They're like, they have a bag of cigarette butts in the field office, and they're like, oh, these definitely aren't evidence. This is just they just put it outside, like, in a little cigarette thing. Not the brightest at the FBI crime lab in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And the one other piece of physical evidence that they didn't even come upon until years later was on February 10th, 1980. So this is now like 9 years after it happened. 8-year-old Brian Ingram was vacationing with his family on the Columbia River at a beachfront known as Tina Bar, about 9 miles downstream from Vancouver, Washington, and 20 miles southwest of Ariel. he uncovered 3 packets of the ransom cash totaling around $5,800 as he raked the sandy riverbed to build a campfire. The bills had disintegrated from lengthy exposure to the elements, but were still bundled in rubber bands. FBI technicians confirmed that the money was indeed a portion of the ransom, 2 packets of $120 bills each, and a third packet of 90, all arranged in the same order as when they were given to Cooper. And they also had the same serial numbers as those ones so that was also how they figured it out.
So that 8-year-old really did more for the investigation than the FBI did.
He did. They found a bunch of crumpled, broken money while just trying to build a campfire. Another thing, none of the money was ever used. Like, that money has never been found in any businesses or...
Sure, but they're 20s. You know, who's, like, checking the serial numbers on every 20?
Yeah.
Fair. There was a convenience store right near where, like, the plane was flying over, like, in theory where he could have landed, that I think it was within, like, 4 hours after the time of when he in theory jumped. There was, like, a robbery, so people are also like, that could have been him. But the fact that, like, I'm sure they were probably at least a little bit on the look. I think also all of the, again, I'm not sure if we were talking about this later and I'm jumping ahead, but I'm pretty sure all of the serial numbers, like, started with, like, 70 or something like that. So they might have just been like to all shop owners, hey, like, just check to see if you have anything that starts with, like, 70 or whatever. And I think that they got the money all from, like, 2 different locations in Washington. I forget the exact, but there were, like, 2 different banks that then they got all of the money from.
Gotcha.
But I feel like it would make sense that they would make it somewhat identifiable bills, hoping that that would eventually help them if they didn't catch him before he got away.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, like, hard to imagine how they would actually do that. Like, because, like Chris said, 20s or so, like, every shop owner in America couldn't have been like, yeah, we'll check all of the $20 bills that we've gotten.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, I assume that's probably part of the reason why he asked for 20s as opposed to just all of the money in, like, hundreds, because then 20s wouldn't be as conspicuous if he's only buying stuff in cash. But even still, in theory, after now, like, to present day, I don't think that they have found any of that money. And, like, so if 5,800 of that is washed up on some shore, I guess it does make sense that that might not have been the only money that, who knows if maybe the bag did fly open and he lost a bunch of it, or if he fell into the, like, if he ended up in the riverbank, or who knows. Now we're going to talk about some theories, hypotheses, and conjecture. So during the first year of the investigation, the FBI used eyewitness testimonials from the passengers and flight crew to develop sketches of Cooper. The first sketch, officially titled Composite A, was completed a few days after the hijacking and was released on November 28, 1971. According to witnesses, the Composite A sketch, jokingly known as Bing Crosby, was not an accurate likeness of Cooper. It's not too different from the follow-up sketches, but it starts to give you an idea of what he looked like. And I'll also get into ultimately what the descriptions are. But then, just to keep buzzing through this, completed in late 1972, the second Composite B sketch was intended to more accurately depict Cooper's age, skin tone, and face shape. Eyewitnesses to whom Composite B was shown to said the sketch was more accurate, but the Composite B Cooper looked too angry or nasty. And so, finally, using the criticism of Composite B, FBI artists made adjustments and improvements to the Composite B sketch, and on January 2nd, 1973, the FBI finalized revised Composite B, their third sketch of Cooper. Of the new sketch, one flight attendant said revised Composite B was, quote, a very close resemblance to the hijacker. Another flight attendant said, quote, the hijacker would be easily recognized from this sketch. And in April 1973, the FBI concluded the revised composite B sketch was the best likeness of Cooper they could develop and should be considered the definitive sketch of D.B. Cooper. So that's that third one you guys see. What do you think about those sketches?
I agree that the second sketch does look like spookier. Like he just looks angry. So like you wouldn't normally, I don't know. If you just saw a guy on the street, like he might not have that expression on his face. So I understand that. It's just kind of funny because the first one does
it does look like Bing Crosby.
Yeah. It also this like the differences between the second and third sketch are very slight, but also I think some other criticism they said was that he looked too old, so that's why I think he's got a little bit less face wrinkles. Also his hair is slightly different. I mean the face face shape looks pretty much the same. Yeah.
Interesting shape. Kind of a U-ish V, kind of like a light bulb.
Yeah. It's
big ass forehead.
Yeah.
Could land a plane on that thing. Jeepers.
Yeah.
Big ass forehead.
Like definitely a pretty identifiable looking guy.
Yes.
And he was dressed up in the suit, and they got him also with the sunglasses because
the glasses are a nice touch.
This guy looks cool with shades.
Like just in case it's sunny out, this is what he might look like.
But also, just in case it's sunny out, the sunglasses in the first sketch are different than the other ones because the second and third one look kind of Ray-Bans-y, like that classic black Ray-Bans. But the first
one looked like a dad at a golf course.
Yeah, they look like Oakleys or something, like like cheap CVS sunglasses.
Yes.
So I don't know how there wasn't a consistent story with those. Yeah.
Look cooler.
They were like, we got to make him look cooler. Give him some Ray-Bans. It's the 70s. But I think apparently the main resemblance, like the main person that they interviewed was a college student that was sitting across from him for almost the entire flight. That gave most of the likeness. And then there were two main flight attendants that I think he only kept two of them on and like the pilot when they took off again. So I think it was a combination of that. Plus, I would assume some people around him. But I don't know about you guys. When I'm on a plane, I'm not looking at every single person. Although I guess if it's like, like rumors of somebody having a bomb, then I might
pay attention. Yeah.
I might pay attention. I might take a gander at his face.
But also, you can't miss that forehead. So
yeah, well-dressed guy with the sunglasses and the 5 head.
People is that a clip-on tie? Is that what that is?
I go,
is that the JCPenney exclusive clip-on tie?
With the mother of pearl tie clip? Can I get? Oh, they stopped making that 3 years ago. I can't even buy it anymore. Is there metal on that though?
Is that mother of pearl?
Is that a Caucasian hair falling off his head?
This guy's smoking 8 cigarettes in an hour?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I'm surprised, but also not surprised at the amount of detail that they could get from him. Because again, it's the 70s. There's no CCTV cameras of people as he's getting on. There's no evidence. This is all from people. But
and there's no other entertainment on a plane either. You're not watching a movie. You're watching the flight attendants with the bomb, you know?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess like
this is true.
Yeah.
That's an important. Like what do people do on planes?
Smoked.
Yeah, smoke.
Read a book. I don't know. Smoke a bunch of cigarettes.
Read I guess people were probably reading newspapers on planes.
They all got dressed up in suits though. It wouldn't have been weird. Like it used to be a whole to do to get on a plane. It wouldn't have been weird to see a guy in his suit. Clip-on tie would have been strange, but other than that, he would have fit right in.
I mean, it's the 70s.
Yeah.
So, like people were flying in the 70s.
I mean, this makes me.
Were they still getting dressed up in the 70s?
In Nixon's America, for sure.
Probably. I mean, this makes me wonder when clip-on ties were invented, because I would have assumed that was like even later than 71. That clip-on ties existed in 71. They had some class. They had some merit of like, we're gonna tie a tie properly.
Trying to get you an answer on that one. A date for clip-on ties.
If someone was smoking that much next to me, I'd probably get annoyed and like look at time to be like, who the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And then he has the Looney Tunes like TNT, and then you're paying attention.
And you're like, oh.
I'm sitting next to fucking Wile E. Coyote over here.
Yeah. It's not that long of a flight. Like, it's a lot of packs of cigarettes. Did you find an answer on that?
I'm getting there. 1928. 1928, the clip-on tie. December 13th, 1928 was
I guess that's then the first iteration of what they could call a clip-on tie. So maybe they had really solidified it by the 70s. I guess D.B. Cooper probably made it rise in popularity. That people were like, who's that guy in the news? He had the convenience of wearing the classiness of a tie, but then he was able to take it off when he really needed to get going. That's something
J.C. Penney brought him back after this.
J.C. Penney, but new ones in production. They made him the face of clip-on ties. So, in terms of the actual profiling of him and what they found, flight attendants Schaefer and Mucklow, who spent the most time interacting with Cooper, were interviewed on the same night in separate cities and gave nearly identical descriptions. Around 5 feet 10 inches tall, love a short king, bordering on short king. Mid-40s, which I don't know how, I should have asked you guys how old you thought he was by just this story, but mid-40s is, like, you would have thought that this was a younger man. At least I would have thought that it was a younger man. Short black hair combed back with a huge fucking forehead. They didn't say that, but it's implied. 170 to 180 pounds, olive skin tone, and with no discernible accent. The only person to recall his eye color was Schaffner, who described them as being brown. So, what kind of picture does that paint for you guys? Aside from the ones that were already sketched.
It sounds like a pretty generic white man to me.
Yeah. Even I think it was either the college student that was like sitting across from him or someone sitting near a few other people after hearing their description was like, oh, I actually think he was shorter, like 5'9" or like 5'8". So like real short king. You're not going to think that this guy's like a huge, like, give me all your money. This is like a small man.
Little old me.
Like, imagine, do you think you could hold up a plane, Chris?
If I had TNT? Looney Tunes TNT, probably. Other than that, unlikely.
Yeah.
I just like, this is a time period that I'm sure like toxic masculinity was just raging. Like, I wonder if anyone's ever tried the strategy of like intentionally being like, yeah, he was like 5'6", just to see if someone's like,
5'10".
I'm 5'10". I'm 5'10".
Yeah, maybe they thought that. Well, maybe two things. One, like that if the college student or something might have also been around 5'10" and was like, actually, he was totally shorter than me. He must have been like 5'9" or 5'8". And maybe they were also like on the news. They were like, oh, if we say that he's short, then like DB Cooper's going to call in and be like, hey, like, I know you're talking about me. I'm not turning myself in, but I just want to clarify. I am 6 feet. And they're like, are you sure? Like, people who say they're 6 feet are actually 5'11". He's like, no, I'm 6 feet and I'm 6'1". And they're like, people thought that you were short. And he's like, no. Maybe he'd come on to defend himself.
Mm-hmm. Like, I want them to intentionally be like, his hair's come back, but it would look better if he had like a bang. He was wearing a really cheap,
really crappy sunglasses.
It's like really terrible goggle bad sunglasses.
Yeah, the first sketch he's wearing super shitty sunglasses, and then some witness who's definitely not DB Cooper is like, actually, I think he was wearing cooler sunglasses than that. And maybe his forehead's not that. He definitely doesn't look like Bing Crosby.
He looks like Bing Crosby, but a lot less handsome.
But definitely taller. And then they do this sketch, and they're like, maybe let's go back to Bing Crosby. Maybe that was nicer.
Now, here's the question. Did anybody ever look into Bing Crosby? Where was he this day?
If they're like, this guy looks like Bing Crosby, you'd think the first place you go is to Bing Crosby. Not sure what he was up to.
When did old Bing die? Let's find out.
That's a great question. Probably would not have been this age.
Bing kicked it in 1977. So
how old was he though?
He was born in 1903, so he would have been about 68, 69 when this happened. Which is nice, you know.
Probably a little too old to be DB Cooper. I mean,
little...
I'm sorry. Did you just say which is nice?
Which is nice. A nice, full, healthy life. So the FBI, as we've covered, they're on their shit. They're really killing it. They're doing everything that they can do. So in May 1973, it's like 2 years after the fact, they're still like trying to be relevant. The FBI internally released an 8-page suspect profile. Really like, hey guys, if anybody sees this dude, let us know. And it speculated quite a few things. The profile speculated that Cooper was a military-trained parachutist due to his apparent comfort level with the military-style parachutes he was provided with, and that he may have even been an Air Force veteran based on his familiarity with the Seattle area. Not a huge jump to make. One thing that I skipped over, when he asked for the money and parachutes, he asked for 4 parachutes because he thought that, well, it was thought that his thought process was, if I ask for 1, they're going to give me a defective parachute because they know it's for me. But if I ask for 4, I might ask the crew to jump along the way. They gave him 2, I don't remember exactly what they're called, but like real, like full parachutes. And then they gave him 2 training parachutes. And so I think in one of the training parachutes, he took he basically like hollowed it out and also was like putting money in it. And then I think he took one of the real parachutes and jumped with that, because I think they might have found the other 2. But
would there not have already been parachutes on the plane? Just in case? Do planes not have parachutes?
I don't think planes have parachutes.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like they could have enough parachutes for every. I mean, I wonder if they might have. Well,
yeah, but every chair turns into a boat, so
every chair is a flotation device, and all of the doors have slides built in. So at least they got that going for
it's like
them.
a fucking amusement park on planes, but no parachutes.
It really is. So I can understand, and there was like even more speculation that apparently the door to open the back door that he jumped out of, it was like it wasn't, you know, big red letters being like pull this lever, like it was specific that. And as he's looking out, he was talking to one of them, and he like knew the area from above, which there wasn't like Google Earth and shit, so like a normal citizen wouldn't go, oh hey, like there's my house, like this is where this area is. So can understand some of. Also, another thing was that they figured that he probably wasn't just like someone who like did skydiving for fun, or just had did it for sport, because since he was older, that people in that community would recognize him, something like that. That they were like, he's not like, he doesn't do it for sport, but he knows about parachutes, so maybe it's military. They went down every avenue.
So they said that he knew how to parachute. He knew like how the parachutes work, whatever. He knew the area just by looking at it. But then in the FBI summary, it says that he like wasn't an expert. Didn't they? They were like, oh, like evidence suggests that he like didn't know what he was doing. It sounds like he knew what
that's
he
correct.
was doing.
That's I kept that in on purpose because I was like, well, first I wanted to read the FBI thing as is, but based on all this other stuff, I mean, also there were only like the 2 flight attendants, and I'm sure they were under duress that they like, well, who knows, like if they knew exactly what he was saying, but he obviously sounded like he knew enough to get the hell out of there. I'll keep on going with the profile because then we do get into some of the knowledge and planning and like maybe why he might have jumped out where he did and where he thought he would end up and stuff like that. So I'll finish talking about the profile. The profile also speculated that he was not a heavy drinker. This I actually found very interesting, that he wasn't a heavy drinker because the only drink he was served was quickly spilled and he never requested another. And they determined that an alcoholic would have likely been incapable of turning down further alcoholic beverages throughout the stressful and lengthy hijacking. So they're like, he couldn't have been an alcoholic because an alcoholic would have been too stressed and been like, keep giving me stuff because I'm stressed.
Mm-hmm.
Which is an interesting point. So props to the FBI. And then I had already kind of teased this, but by calculating the number of cigarettes he smoked throughout the hijacking, as if like he was actively doing the hijacking, being like, okay, give me this much money, which he might have been. I don't know what people were doing in the 70s. Like everybody talked with a cigarette in their mouth, according to the FBI. But by calculating the amount of cigarettes that he smoked throughout the hijacking, the FBI believed that he smoked around 1 pack of cigarettes per day. The profile also concluded that he was more intelligent than a common criminal due to his mannerisms, such as his vocabulary level, his proper use of aviation-related terminology, complete lack of profane language, his calm demeanor, his style of dress, and the respect he showed for the female members of the crew. So this wasn't just like some hoodlum.
No. But one thing's for sure. If the jump out the plane didn't kill him, lung cancer did.
Yeah, at this point. If he was smoking that much. So yeah, so he was like, another thing that I read was that the FBI theorized that he, like, because obviously you'd think, what are his motivations for doing this if he seems like a middle-aged, put-together guy? So they assumed it must have been because he needed the money, because, like, it wasn't like it was a common hoodlum just like trying to get a few bucks, that it was like something that he like thought and planned out and really needed a large amount of money, which you would think if people had a lot of debts, they'd be able to also maybe put that into their investigation. But they figured that he might not have been just doing it to see if he could, because again, he wasn't some young spry man like that. He wasn't doing it just to see if he could hold up a plane. But who am I to judge that? They also theorized that Cooper took his alias from a popular French-language Belgium comic series featuring the fictional hero Dan Cooper, a Royal Canadian Air Force test pilot who took part in numerous heroic adventures, including parachuting. Because I'm sure Dan Cooper was not his real name. Because why would you use your real name if you're gonna heist a plane?
Why would this guy from Washington be up on his French-language Belgian comics?
I don't have an answer for you. Not even a funny one. So now, to get into the final part, we're going to talk about the knowledge, what they theorized of his knowledge and planning, and ultimately some things they determined of what his fate might have been. We've been teasing a lot of it throughout in his whole thought process. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of wrapping up all of their information on it. So, based on the evidence and Cooper's tactics, the FBI speculated Cooper carefully planned the hijacking and had detailed specific knowledge of aviation, the local terrain, and the 727's capabilities. Cooper chose a seat in the last row of the rear cabin for 3 reasons, is what they theorized. To observe and respond to any action in front of him, to minimize the possibility of being approached or attacked by someone behind him, and to make himself less conspicuous to the rest of the passengers. To ensure
Solid.
he would, which makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
To ensure he wouldn't be deliberately supplied with sabotaged equipment. Oh, and I already said this, but I'll read it. Cooper demanded 4 parachutes to force the assumption he might compel 1 or more hostages to jump with him. FBI agent Ralph Himmelsbach noted Cooper's choice of a bomb instead of other weapons previously used by hijackers thwarted any multi-directional attempts by the FBI to rush him. Which again is like, I guess makes more sense than if you just was like, I have a gun. Because then you just got to attack him and get him to not hold the gun. Cooper was also careful to avoid leaving evidence. Obviously not too careful. Before he jumped, Cooper demanded Mucklow's return to him all notes either written by him or on his behalf. Mucklow said she used the last match in Cooper's paper matchbook to light one of his cigarettes, and when she attempted to dispose of the empty matchbook, Cooper demanded she return it to him. Although Cooper was methodical in his attempts to retrieve evidence, he was unsuccessful as he left his clip-on tie in his seat. From JCPenney.
I feel like that's like a pretty big thing to forget.
Yeah.
And not only did he throw it on the plane, he left it on his seat.
Yeah. Also, because I would assume by the point that he was getting rid of the clip-on tie, that was probably like all the passengers had gotten off. It was just him and a few crew members. So he was like, you know what? I'm just going to take this and I'm going to leave that right where I sat. Like, why was he even still near that seat in the back of the plane?
Criminals love to like, even like the most careful ones. They always kind of like leave little hints. Like the Zodiac killer was sending letters to the newspapers and shit. Like they kind of want to get caught. They're like, oh, yeah. I'm doing this for secret, but like maybe you can figure it out.
True. I mean, he definitely planned something. This wasn't like he was going to Seattle and it was like, ooh, you know what could make a fun afternoon? Stealing $200,000 and jumping out of the plane. I'm sure it was something that he had figured out beforehand. So, finally, this is the FBI, as we've talked about, on their game. They are best minds in the country, ladies and gentlemen. From the beginning of their investigation, the FBI was skeptical about Cooper's chances and speculated Cooper did not survive his jump. A very solid speculation to make. The FBI provided several reasons and facts to support their conclusion. Cooper's apparent lack of skydiving experience. So I guess experience is the key word there. He might have known how to use a parachute. Maybe didn't skydive all the time. His apparent unfamiliarity with parachutes, but again, it also sounds like he knew how to use the parachute. His lack of proper equipment for his jump and survival, as he's just wearing a suit with cool sunglasses. The inclement weather on the night of the hijacking, the wooded terrain in which Cooper jumped, Cooper's lack of knowledge of his landing area, and the unused ransom money. So, it all makes sense. Like, very easy doubts. So first, Cooper appeared to lack the necessary skydiving knowledge, skills, and experience for the type of jump he attempted. Quote, "We originally thought Cooper was an experienced jumper, perhaps even a paratrooper," said Larry Carr, who led the investigation team from 2006 to 2009. So they still had teams doing it
35 years ago? Or 35 years later?
Like, recently. They spoiler alert, they stopped. In 2016, they put out a bulletin being like, you know what? We got to put this manpower somewhere else. In 2016, and this happened in 1971. But then Larry Carr went on to said, "We concluded after a few years this was simply not true. No experienced parachutist would have jumped in the pitch black night in the rain with a 172 mile per hour wind in his face, wearing loafers and a trench coat. It was simply too risky." Yeah, like.
Yeah, but it looks cool.
Mm-hmm. Badass, for sure.
What do you think about that? I don't know if I thought about that.
I'm sure as scared as the flight attendants were, to see that guy just like jump out of the plane, it was probably a cool moment.
Do you think he gave him like a little?
Oh yeah.
He had to like play some outro, like YouTube outro music, and was like, "See you guys." A little tip of his hat. And he's like, "I'm out of here." And then he jumps out of the plane, and they're like, "God, that was so fucking cool." And as he's like flying and there's wind and stuff, he's like, "Oh, I bet that looks so fucking cool." He's just like falling. And then he's like, "Oh shit," pulls the ripcord. So, yeah. He might have been experienced, he might not have been experienced. They also don't know how experienced he was because they couldn't ask him about it. But the second of their big thing, Cooper did not appear to have the equipment necessary for either the jump or his survival in the wilderness. Like we said, this is over like Washington and Oregon, and I've never been to that part of the country, but it seems like a hell of a lot of woods. So he did not have a helmet. He jumped into a 15-degree Fahrenheit wind at 10,000 feet in November over Washington state without proper protection against the extreme wind chill. Although the contents of Cooper's paper bag are unknown, Cooper did not use any of the bag's contents to assist him during any part of the hijacking, so the FBI speculated the bag contained items Cooper needed for his jump, such as boots, gloves, and goggles. but again, speculation. I guess when you're hijacking a plane, you don't bring a big old carry-on full of like stuff in case you wimp out and don't do it for your destination. But he probably could have requested a little bit more than just money and 4 parachutes. He probably could have been like, hey, throw a helmet in there, maybe some goggles. But then he was like, oh, but then I won't have these cool shades when I jump out of the plane as I'm jumping into the night.
Now, I have a thought, a tip for the FBI even, and I'm giving this to them for free of charge. Did they consider looking into like who didn't come to work the next day in Oregon? Like nobody's like, wow, Jeff from down the hall just stopped showing up for work. Did they make that connection? Yeah.
Yeah, like a missing person.
Yeah, that's for free, FBI. You can use that.
Especially like if the composite sketch that they had, if everybody was like, oh yeah, that's him. That's for sure what he looks like. They should have slapped that on some milk cartons and been like, put him in the newspaper and be like, have you seen this man? I mean, they're probably not going to see him now.
No,
but like
unlikely.
Before. As he was probably face down in a riverbed with a bag of cash. But like, hey, has anybody seen him before? Especially if he was in his mid-40s. He's lived a life.
Yeah. And he had money to buy a suit and stuff, like, right?
Well, we don't know how nice the suit was. It was a clip-on tie.
Okay, but I guess he had money for a plane ticket too. Like he had to have an income source, so he had a job. In theory, he was educated. Thank you.
I wonder if the FBI just didn't even think
of that. Again, all yours, guys. Use it.
Also, in the 70s, did you not need any kind of ID to get on a plane?
Clearly, there was no security. This guy was rocking a bomb in his briefcase. So, I don't know. Things were lax back in the day.
It's always like after
pre-9/11
terrible happens that they're like, oh man, we should have been looking for that this whole time. Like then after this, then obviously there were a lot like this affected things. They changed how planes were made. The thing
did they
like,
really?
They did on the back of the plane, like something with the door or like the opening mechanism or something. It's called like the Cooper something. Like they named it after him. That they changed how planes were made.
Very cool.
So, and again, I'm sure they also checked more of people's attaché cases for TNT sticks. And then they were like, oh, we probably don't need to look for real bombs. And then 9/11 happened and they were like, oh, we should have been doing it this whole time. We should have been looking for guns and stuff. It's always when it's too late. Now, you're probably thinking on this last thought, was he probably just jumping into space for the unknown? Because in a lot of heist movies, it's not just one guy. It's a group of guys. They got a whole thing going on.
I've seen Point Break.
Have you seen Ocean's 11?
You better believe it.
So Cooper did not appear to have an accomplice waiting on the ground to help him escape. Such an arrangement would have required both a precisely timed jump and the flight crew's cooperation to follow a predetermined flight path. But Cooper did not give the flight crew a specific path. Moreover, the flight crew proposed, and Cooper agreed, to alter the flight path and fly from Seattle to Reno for refueling. And Cooper had no way of keeping an accomplice apprised of his changing plans. The low cloud cover and lack of visibility to the ground further complicated Cooper's ability to determine his location, establish a bearing, or see a landing zone. It's not like he had a cell phone and yeah, he totally died. There's no way he survived. But it's not like they were like, hey, like piloting, and he's like, hey, like we can stop in Reno for like fuel. And he was like, oh my God, yes, that's so much better than what I thought. Let's do that. And then he's just like texting his friend and he's like, yo, we're actually stopping in Reno. Like follow us. And then there's just a guy on the ground like chasing the plane in a car. He had nobody waiting for him. He was like too chill of like, yeah, let's go wherever. And like, oh, that point looks good. I'm just going to jump out now. So finally, the ransom money was never spent, as I said before. But also, like we've said, maybe they just never found it. But they did find that recovered portion which was obviously found unused as it was all still bound up. Quote, diving into the wilderness without a plan, without the right equipment, in such terrible conditions, he probably never even got the chute open, said Carr. FBI agent Richard Tosaw theorized Cooper became incapacitated from hypothermia during his jump, landed in the Columbia River, and drowned. Probably. Yeah, it's sad. Like, he does all this. Well, Shiloh's making a sad face.
Oh.
No, that's pretty. Like, I know he was like a criminal and everything, but like freezing in midair and then like plummeting to your death sounds pretty sad.
Yeah, that's not going out nicely.
Yeah. It's very like Jack Titanic of him, like freezing to death.
Yeah.
Fun way to go.
Yeah. However, FBI agents were not unanimous in their assessment of Cooper's ultimate fate, which is to be expected. In a 1976 Seattle Times article, a senior FBI agent anonymously said, quote, I think Cooper made it. I think he slept in his own bed that night. It was a clear night and a lot of the country is pretty flat. He could have just walked out, right down the road. Hell, they weren't even looking for him there at the time. They thought he'd be somewhere else. He could just walk down the road. Conclusive evidence of Cooper's death has not been found. So,
have they looked?
At his home?
Just anywhere. Have they looked? Did they check the woods?
They were looking for like decades. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but in 2016, they released a little press release, by the writer person that we've been talking about, who's been done such a good job. That was like update on investigation of 1971 hijacking by D.B. Cooper. And it was basically them saying, yeah, we got to use, after 45 years, it's time to redirect some people to some more pressing cases. Because also, if he was in his mid-40s in 1971,
not a big threat anymore.
Add 45 years, and then how many years has it been since 2016?
6.
Add that onto it. It's probably not a threat right now, especially if he never popped up again on another plane. Although, if it was ever made into like a Chris Nolan movie, I feel like there would be a shot at the end of like an old man on like a plane like nowadays, and they're like, what would you like to drink? And then it like looks up and he's like wearing the sunglasses and he's like, a bourbon soda. And then it
just
like
top spinning right next to him.
And then it like and he's like, can I smoke on this plane? And they're like, no, you can't do that. It's 2023. You cannot smoke. I'm imagining it comes out next year. So yeah. And like I said, before we even get into final thoughts, like I said, there was a documentary / narrative film, as they called it, that came out called I Am D.B. Cooper, and it was like interviewing this guy who also did not seem like he was in like his 80s or 90s. He seemed like maybe 60s or 70s, claiming to be D.B. Cooper. I have not seen the movie, so I don't know if it's meant to be like a joke or like is completely fiction, or if it's actually trying to be real. And it's not a big enough movie for for there to be actual news articles about it. So I'm going to go out on a limb and guess it's not really a documentary. Probably more of a mockumentary. So that's the story of D.B. Cooper. It's not even a finished story because who knows if, they probably can't figure it out at this point, but maybe they'll find those cigarettes, or like maybe someone will be in the FBI crime lab and be like, guys, someone didn't sweep up. There's a hair on the ground. Wait a minute. Guys, this is the one from the headrest. Oh.
They just haven't dusted at Quantico in 45 years.
Yeah.
I do want to point out in the rest of this like FBI press release that it says the FBI they've examined countless items at the FBI laboratory. They examined 4? And then lost half of them.
They lost pretty much all of them.
And then destroyed the other ones.
Yeah, the ones that they didn't lose, they destroyed. And then later we're like, oh, if only we still had those.
Where's that tie at? Do they still have the tie?
Oh,
There's a picture of it on the website. There's a picture of the tie.
I know that the money part of the money, like, it was split up and I think returned to between the two different banks of like what to do with it after they had done all the examining of it. And I know one of those places sold that money, I assume, to like collectors for like thousands of dollars, sold like their share. And I think some of the other bills are in a museum, and I wonder if the tie is also in a museum. I don't know which one.
Yeah, I mean the tie.
No,
the tie is pretty. It's not bad looking. If I saw a guy in that tie,
and the clip really pulls it together.
Yeah, I mean that's why he had to have the mother of pearl tie clip, because then that distracts from the fact that it's a clip-on tie. And we didn't even get into like there's like huge profiling of like all of these like the main 24 suspects or whatever, and all these other people who did similar hijackings, but that's just like that's another hour of just talking about similar hijackings. And also like none of the other hijackings were successful. So I think that should have been a sign that none of those were him, because if he got through that once. But also, I guess if he was just a thrill seeker, maybe he was like, you know what? I bet I can pull it off again.
You know my favorite part of this FBI page about DB Cooper? Under the picture of the parachute, it says, one of the unused parachutes requested but never used in the FBI's so-called Nordjack case. It's your own website. What do you mean, so-called case? It's your case.
Yeah, I mean, that's on their website. They really are contradicting themselves.
They really are.
A lot. I wonder what's in the gallery. What other pictures are there? Oh, no, it's just all this.
I don't see a
Wait,
gallery.
there's a gallery?
Oh,
at the bottom, there's
gallery,
the DB Cooper case.
Oh,
So,
there's really
the tie,
it's just the same.
the Citizen
Sleuths.
Wait, the Citizen
The page is not found, though.
Oh, is the page not found? Well, let me tell you about the Citizen Sleuths. The Citizen Sleuths was a group of 3 or 4 people. I cut it out, but it's actually pretty funny. That's the group of people who found that there was metal on the tie and like tracked down to where it was from. So in March 2009, a group of, quote, citizen sleuths using GPS, satellite imagery, and other technologies unavailable in 1971 began reinvestigating components of the case. Known as the Cooper Research Team. This is like very like UFO, not sympathizers, but like it's very in the vein of aliens. Known as the Cooper Research Team, the group included paleontologist Tom Kane from the Burke Museum of Natural History and Culture in Seattle, scientific illustrator Carol Abraxinkos, and metallurgist Alan Stone. Although the Cooper Research Team, dubbed CRT, obtained little new information about the buried ransom money or Cooper's landing zone, the CRT found, analyzed, and identified hundreds of organic metallic particles on Cooper's tie. Using electron microscopy? I don't know. Using microscopes, the CRT identified lycopodium spores, the source of which was likely pharmaceutical. They also found elements that I'm about to butcher the name of, but one that I will mention is they found minute particles of unalloyed titanium, along with a bunch of other metals and alloys that I cannot pronounce. But the metal and rare earth particles suggested Cooper may have worked for Boeing or another aeronautical engineering firm at the chemical manufacturing plant or at a metal fabrication and production facility. So that's what the sleuths were. People crazy that just pretty much normal people. I mean, yeah, it was a paleontologist and an illustrator and like a guy who studies metal. But the fact that in 2009, a bunch of people are able to be like, yo, FBI, like, let us look into this. And then they found like particles from however many years old.
I feel like there's so many cases like that though. Like there's so many like serial killer cases where it's just someone's been like thinking about it and like I don't know. I forget what the show was called, but there was one recently were like, this woman is just looking into it, and then she like found someone who had like done a 23andMe test, and they were able to like identify a guy by just like talking to people and looking at people's results. Like it was like regular people who figured it out. Case in point, the FBI is useless.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they weren't doing that great a job anyway. And even the reason why I said specifically the titanium is because they said it held a lot of significance because unalloyed titanium in the 1970s was rarely used. So then they were able to pinpoint where it was used, which was only really aircraft fabrication facilities or at chemical companies combining titanium and aluminum to store extremely corrosive substances. So they were basically able to track down all the different metals and go, this is where they would have been used in the 1970s. So, like you're saying, just normal, like, why didn't the FBI think of that? What are we paying tax dollars for? Are they through taxes?
FBI? Yeah.
Yeah. That's the government.
Yeah, it is.
So what the hell are we paying them for? If not to not find DB Cooper. So.
For this great website they got.
Yeah.
The gallery website is even better. This actually is from like 2005.
Yes.
Sorry, maybe 2009.
The archives.fbi.gov?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where if you click on the pictures, it says page not found. Yeah, fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah, they've really kept this up and running. One more thing that I will say about the suspects, even though we didn't specifically go into any of them, some of the suspects were suspected because they looked like him. How fucking insulting would that be if somebody was like, saw that picture and like we've said, the forehead and that hairline and was like, oh, that's like Jeff down the hall in accounting. He's got that hairline. I don't know what he was doing that night, but he probably did it. He doesn't seem too stressed about his year-end bonus. Maybe that's because he fell into an extra $200,000 minus the $5,800 that he dropped in the river. But yeah, I mean, most of the suspects were also like were either like people who looked like the sketch, known con men, people who also tried to hijack planes within 5 years afterwards, and a bunch of like veterans. Like there was a guy, LD, like Lynn Doyle Cooper, who was a Korean War vet that they like suspected, but then they were like, he would have been nowhere near. And like, yeah, a lot of random people, but that's a whole, and like someone in the Marines and like retired Army major, and it's like it still gets deeper. I mean, I know we've been talking about this for close to an hour and a half, and yet there's still more, which makes sense if they've been researching this for decades and didn't even figure it out. So it's not like they could really completely rule out anything, because it all still is maybe. Maybe he worked in a Boeing center. Maybe he died face down in a riverbed, frozen. Sad.
World may never know.
But I guess not sad because he stole $1.4 million.
He had a bomb, allegedly.
And allegedly had a bomb with wires and like red pipes.
It was just spray painted PVC.
And like the wires didn't go anywhere. It was like when you open a drawer and there's just a bunch of like charging cables.
He took out his drunk drawer. That was it.
Took out his drunk drawer, spray painted all the wires or red, or maybe he like did some red, some blue, some yellow. So in case you got to cut a wire, they're all different. You never know which one's the real one. So yeah, so that's our boy DB Cooper. I would hope he's out there still kicking, but at this point he's probably like 90. If he didn't, again, die immediately. Not a laughing matter.
I know, very serious. So sorry to the family of Mr. Cooper.
Little bit of a laughing matter. You know what? He's not listening to this. You think 90-year-old people know how podcasts work?
No.
He's not listening to this. What if he does? If I was a criminal, well, I guess that'd be a very vain thing to do. But if you were a criminal, wouldn't you want to listen to like what people are saying? about you.
I feel like a lot of them are like that. So.
Yeah, and then they end up doing stuff and coming and then it's like, oh, because also I wonder if he's seeing all the stuff that they were talking about him, and he goes, wow, they thought I was a lot smarter than I was. I was not thinking about any of that. My plan was to walk on the plane, ask for money. I didn't even think they were going to say yes.
He just happened to get the last seat on the plane. He's like, those are good reasons. I'm glad I did that.
They're like, yeah, that makes me look smart. Also, what happened? Did he take the bomb with him, or did he leave it on the plane?
He must have, because I feel like.
Did he throw it out first? Yeah. Actually,
that's like a lot of things to hold.
Yeah, because he's definitely he probably took it with him because he wasn't trying to leave anything. Also, if then they opened it and they're like, this wasn't a real bomb, turn the plane around, let's pick him up. Like, so yeah, if he's holding that in one hand and like the money in like a parachute bag in the other hand. So then he took off his tie before because he's like, I gotta loosen the collar. This is stressing me out. And then, he didn't have a third hand to pick back up the tie that he was like, I gotta go. Can you put my glasses on my face? And they're like, here you go. And he's like, thanks. Jumps. I like to imagine
he did
what it probably was.
The flight attendant did have to light his cigarette for him, so clearly.
It's true.
Bro, he's like, I gotta get in my pack a day. Can you light that? I can't hold it.
But wait, give it back to me. I still need that.
But wait, give me the match. Here, put that in my armpit. I'll scrunch it over here. Every nook and cranny. And I'll take another soda. Give it to me. I'm taking another bourbon soda. But I'm not tell them that I'm not an alcoholic. Jumps. All right. I think that's pretty good. Like we're just delving into bits. DB Cooper, if you could say something to DB Cooper if he was listening to this, what would you say?
Thanks for the memes.
Hags?
Hags.
Sick tie. Yeah. Please be the spokesperson if JCPenney ever brings it back. Did JCPenney go under? Was that one of those companies that doesn't exist anymore?
Yeah.
I think the first sign of that was when they had to discontinue their black clip-on tie in 1968. You'd think like that'd be a pretty common thing that maybe people would buy. Yeah. Well, all right.
Fun.
That's that. Tune in next week for another one, and maybe next time we'll figure out a better way to end the episode.
Yeah.
Deuces. Maybe not. Take a while. This podcast is produced and engineered by Gavin Berger with High Tops Media. The Dark Archive is co-hosted by Gavin Berger, Julia Siegel, Chris Massarelli, and Shaila Jayasinghe. Our theme music is composed by Jeffrey Taylor. You can rate and review The Dark Archive on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and check out more episodes of The Dark Archive available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Dark Archive Podcast and on TikTok at The Dark Archive. And see more of our content with High Tops Media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at High Tops Media.